Thank you for joining us today. This event is part of Cambridge Literary Festival's Children's Festival, and it's a partnership between Kettle's Yard Art Gallery and the Red Hen Project, which is a charity helping children and families in North Cambridge. We're so glad you could join us today.
And hello, my name is Rose Feather. I'm an illustrator and I really like making picture books. My picture books often start with drawings of things that I see. So here's some children playing in Cambridge. Then I think about how the drawings could fit in a story. Then I do some cutting and sticking to make the final illustrations for the picture books.
And my name's Imogen, and I work for Kettle's Yard Art Gallery. And in my job, I get to go on lots of adventures with people of all ages, inspired by works of art. We're going to go on an adventure together today. But before we do that, I'd like to introduce you to one more person to help us on that adventure. This is Alfred Wallace. Alfred Wallace spent most of his life at sea as a fisherman. But when he got older, his wife died and he got sad and lonely. So, to cheer himself up, he started painting. We're going to look at some of his paintings later and go on an adventure inspired by them. But before that, I think we need to get you ready for the adventure.
So we've heard that Alfred Wallace was a fisherman and all his adventures happened at sea. But I wonder, do you have anything in your house that reminds you of the seaside? Maybe a bucket and spade, or maybe a fish that you play with in the bath? I've had a look around my house and I've found a thick blue fisherman's jumper. This will keep me warm when I get out at sea. I've also found a waterproof yellow jacket. This will keep me dry if it gets stormy. I've also got some blue fabric. I can look through this fabric and it makes me feel like I'm underwater. Imogen, what have you found?
I found a stripy sailor's shirt, which I'm going to put on. So I'm ready for my adventures on any boats we might go on. And then I've also found some shells, and I'm going to put them to my ear and remember what sound the sea makes.
Brilliant. Well, now it's time for you to have a look around your house and find something to hold or maybe something to wear to get you ready for our adventure. Pause the video now.
Fantastic. Well, now you're all dressed up. It's time to go on our adventure. Now, Cambridge is a long way from the sea. So let's look at one of Alfred Wallace's paintings to remind us of the seaside. Here is a painting by Alfred Wallace with some children pointing at it. Can you have a look and point towards the screen and see what you can see? Can you see any boats? Where are the boats? How many boats can you see? And can you see a lighthouse? How many lighthouses can you see? Can you point towards them? And now have a look at the sea itself. What colour is it? Is it more than one colour? And what sound do you think that sea makes? Can you make that sound together at home?
So Alfred Wallace's paintings inspire lots of stories. Here's one that we're going to share with you today. It's called Alfred's Adventure in the Children's City. The book tells the story of Alfred Wallace packing up his paintings from Kettle's Yard and taking them to the north of the city to share with children and families who live there. The book is inspired by a real project that happened last year. Imogen and I took copies of Alfred Wallace's paintings and took them to a community centre in North Cambridge. We looked at them really closely with some children and some families. We played games, we sang songs, and we came up with this story together.
So I'm going to read that story now. So here it is. Alfred's Adventure in the Children's City, by Rose, by me, and by the families that we worked together on the project. So here goes. In a city full of children, there's a gallery full of paintings. 100 of these paintings are by a fisherman called Alfred Wallace. The children were always very busy having adventures in their city. In the gallery, Alfred felt lonely. He missed his travels over the seas and longed for an adventure of his own. One day, Alfred packed his bag full of paintings and set out into the city in search of an adventure. When he arrived in the north of the city, he took out his paintings one by one. A group of children stopped to look. They'd never seen paintings like this before and weren't sure what to say. Suddenly, Alfred felt nervous too. He didn't know how the adventure should start. He looked at his paintings, but the seaside felt very far away from the busy city. After a while, one of the children pointed at a painting. "A boat?" they asked. Someone else stared and said, "Look, a fish with big teeth." "Caw-caw!" cried another, pointing at the painted seagulls. "Of course," said the fisherman. "Our adventure starts with boats, fish and seagulls." The more they looked, the more they saw. And the more they talked, the more exciting their adventure became. The children showed Alfred how to build a boat, and Alfred showed them how he caught fish on the high seas. They shared their favourite stories and sang their favourite songs and had a brilliant lunch of jam sandwiches and cups of juice. All too soon, it was time for Alfred to go back to the gallery. He was sad to leave his new friends in the city. The next day, the gallery felt quiet, and Alfred wished the adventure didn't have to end. But just as he closed his eyes to make his wish, he heard some voices getting louder and louder. "Caw-caw! I see a boat! I see a fish!" Alfred opened his eyes, and there were all the children. They had come to see him and his paintings in the gallery. Alfred and the children explored the gallery all morning. They found lots of interesting things to talk about and shared stories about their favourite adventures. At the end of the day, it was time for the children to go back to their homes in the north of the city. "Come back soon," said Alfred. "We will," said the children. And they did.
We hope you enjoyed the story. Let's look back at a few pages in detail. On the first page, there's some children giving cuddles to their favourite bits of Cambridge. In the middle is a little boy giving a squeeze to the River Cam. What's happening here? There's some punters on the river. In the corner, this little girl is giving a squeeze to the Fitzwilliam Museum. That's the museum just down the road from Kettle's Yard Art Gallery. At the bottom, the children are carrying Kettle's yard. But who's having a ride in the middle? Can you see? That's right. It's Alfred Wallace in his yellow coat. If you were going to give a cuddle to your favourite part of Cambridge, which part would it be? Let's have a look at this page. This is the part of the story where Alfred Wallace takes his paintings into the city and shows the children for the first time. Let's look at their faces. How do we think they're feeling? Maybe a little bit worried, maybe a bit nervous, maybe a bit grumpy. What about this page? There's so much happening here. Point to something on the screen that you can see. Hey, I can see a little boy taking a photo. And here, Alfred Wallace is sharing a story with the children. That's a story inside the story. I love looking really carefully at pages in picture books. I always find something that I missed the first time round.
Now the children and Alfred showed each other their favourite ways of going on adventures. And we're going to show you one now that can take you all the way to the sea from your kitchen.
Alfred Wallace used to paint with anything he could find around his house. He used to paint on bits of cardboard. So I thought we could take inspiration from that and look round our houses to make something really brilliant inspired by the seaside. We're going to make tiny seasides in a bottle. I call them Seascapes. Here's one I've already made. It's got pink seaweed, blue thread waves, and a tiny orange fish in the bottom. What you need to make these are empty jars or bottles from your recycling. You need to make sure they've got lids on and that the lids close really tightly. You also need some bits and bobs from around your house that remind you of the sea, but they all need to be small enough to fit in the jars. What have I got in my bag? Some bubble wrap. That could be helpful to show the bubbles on the ocean. I found some pink felt. Maybe I could cut a bright pink fish out of the felt to go in my seascape. I've also got a feather. There's lots of seagulls that sit on the ocean, but I've never seen a purple seagull. Here's some green felt seaweed. Ooh, and some blue string. And some yellow string. That could be like some yellow seaweed or maybe even like an octopus tentacle. And here are some shells. They'd be really good in our tiny seasides. And finally, I've also got some tiny little beads. They could be little fish or tiny sea urchins. If you've got little brothers and sisters with you, don't forget to remind them not to put these things in their mouths. So once you've found all bits and bobs from around your house that remind you of the seaside, it's time to make your seascape. So if you take off the lid and choose some special things to go in the jar. I'm going to choose a little red bead for a little red fish, a shell. Oh, and there's an orange fish that fell in as well. Oh, I can't use this shell, it doesn't fit. What about this one instead? I might put in some green seaweed and some blue thread. Ooh, that might look like a wave. So when you've put all your bits and bobs in your jar, it's time to fill it with some water. There we go. Then we'll screw the top on really, really tight so none of the water comes out, even if you turn it upside down. Here we go. And there you go. There's your seascape. Here's another one that I've made. In this one, I've got my little pink fish. Oh, she's got her head down in the sand. And I've got a blue shell. There's some yellow thread in the middle. And I even found some sand to put in the bottom. Now it's time for you to make your seascapes. So pause the video now.
Now you've got your seascape, perhaps you can make up a story together about what might happen in your seaside world. The children in the story found it helpful to look at paintings to give them inspiration for their adventures. Kettle's Yard is full of paintings by Alfred Wallace and lots of other people too. We're not open at the moment, but why don't you check out our website, kettlesyard.co.uk, for lots of ideas and inspiration, things to look at and things to do together as a family. We're hoping that we're going to open our doors again in mid-May, so why don't you come and see us and bring your friends along? It's completely free. If you want to find out more about the Red Hen Project, you can check out their website. It's redhenproject.org. Perhaps you could even give a donation for all the brilliant work that they're doing. Well, that's it from us today, but thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to see what seascapes you made or hear about what adventures you went on. So why not take a photo and share it with us on @KettlesYard or @CamLitFest.
If you'd like to take part in more Cambridge Literary Festival events, then you can join their mailing list at www.cambridgeliteraryfestival.com, or you can find them on social media @CamLitFest. Happy adventuring!
Thanks for joining us. Happy adventuring!